Doctor who proclaimed that bow ties, fezzes, and Stetsons were cool. He's the Doctor who married River Song, the best character, visited his own grave, and journeyed to the centre of the TARDIS. He is the 11th Doctor. Matt Smith became an instant fan favourite back in 2010, despite having some pretty big converse to fill. He had 3 main companions, 2 TARDIS interiors, and 1 sonic screwdriver. And there are many interesting details about his era you might not be aware of. I'm Ellie for Who Culture, here with 10 things you didn't know about the 11th Doctor. Number 10. His favourite dance was improvised. The 11th Doctor was something of a trailblazer, inventing the quadricycle, Yorkshire puddings, fish custard, and pasta, allegedly. But arguably his most enduring innovation was devised by Matt Smith himself. Upon arriving at Amy and Rory's wedding, the Doctor declares that he only came for the dancing, before breaking into a routine hilariously dubbed the drunk giraffe. Basically, just stick your arms in the air on either side of your head and wiggle them from side to side. Simple, yet bound to make you the talk of the family Christmas party. As Karen Gillan recalled to Doctor Who Confidential, this iconic arm-shaking action was ad-libbed by Matt Smith on the day. She said, quote, "It was written obviously that he's a terrible dancer. Matt made up this whole routine. Arthur Darvill concurred that, quote, this is just how he dances, with Stephen Moffat adding that, quote, he's incredibly athletic and graceful in his own way. It's hardly the most stylish dance ever, but it was a hit with the kids at the Pond's wedding and a whole generation of young fans watching at home. Maybe don't go doing it at weddings in real life though." Number 9. His hair was quite problematic. The 11th Doctor's quiff is almost as iconic as his bow tie, but it was also something of a continuity nightmare. This was a particular problem in The Time of Angels, the first story Matt Smith filmed, with the actor's wild hair magically changing length between scenes. For the beach scenes at the start of the episode, Smith had a much messier hairstyle, with his fringe hanging over his eyes. Coupled with windy conditions, this had the unfortunate effect of obscuring his face, with showrunner Stephen Moffat likening him to the Dulux dog. The earliest scene in the Delirium Archive Museum was filmed months later, by which point the crew had, according to Moffat, quote, established what they wanted to do with Smith's floppy mop of hair. The overall silhouette remained, but the fringe was cut shorter and in a much more continuity-friendly way. This also explains why the 11th Doctor's hair gets progressively neater and less chaotic over the course of his next 2 series. It took time to figure out how best to manage it. Ironically, by the time of Smith's final story, he had no hair whatsoever, having shaved it all off for his role in the Ryan Gosling movie Lost River. Talk about cutting your hair to spite your face. Number 8. He increased bow tie sales by over 90%. Few Doctor Who costumes are regarded as genuinely fashionable, and few Doctor Who costume designers can be described as genuine trendsetters. But the bow tie and tweed ensemble devised by Ray Holman for Matt Smith's Doctor made waves in a way that nobody could have predicted. Matt Smith's debut series began at the start of April 2010, and "bow ties are cool" quickly became one of his trademark lines.
Bow ties are cool. Bow ties are cool. Bow ties are cool. Bow ties are cool. Bow ties are cool.
Plenty of people agreed with him too. By the end of the month, the Telegraph was reporting that the bow tie had enjoyed a, quote, surge in popularity thanks to the 11th Doctor, with UK retailer Topman citing an insane 94% increase in sales. It's an even more impressive feat when you consider that by this point only 4 episodes of Series 5 had aired. We can only imagine how many bow ties were sold over the following weeks and beyond. It also makes you wonder what the Doctor's next viral fashion accessory might be. Only time will tell, I guess, but if any Doctor can challenge for that coveted Best Dressed award, then it's definitely Ncuti Gatwa. Number 7. He encountered so many duplicates. Most Doctors have to contend with duplicates of some sort, be they evil lookalikes or literal splinters of themselves, and the 11th Doctor was no exception. He came face to fleshy face with a doppelganger in Rebel Flesh and the Almost People, but the flesh wasn't the only entity to steal this Doctor's likeness. Prisoner Zero did the same thing in the 11th Hour, as did the Tesselector in The Wedding of River Song. Then there's the Spoonhead that impersonates the Doctor in The Bells of St. John, and Mr. Clever in Nightmare in Silver. And that's without even mentioning all the cases where timey-wimey shenanigans resulted in 2 Matt Smiths appearing on screen. There's the dead future Doctor in The Big Bang, the wibbly lever Doctor in Comic Relief minisode Time, the Beryllium Doctor in DVD minisode Last Night, and the big friendly button Doctor in Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS. The 11th Doctor also encounters another copy of himself in Let's Kill Hitler when the TARDIS voice interface briefly assumes his form. This is surely some kind of record, and almost certainly more than any other Doctor. The BBC bosses clearly realised you can never have too much Matt Smith. Number 6, he was inspired by Indiana Jones. What inspired the 11th Doctor? There was clearly a hint of Patrick Troughton's second Doctor with the whole bow tie thing, and Tomb of the Cybermen is also one of Matt Smith's favourite stories as well. Elsewhere, Albert Einstein has also been cited as a key influence. Discussing his costume on Doctor Who Confidential, Smith identified another unlikely reference point in the form of Hollywood's greatest archaeologist. He said, quote, "I think my costume sort of manages a bit of, God, do I say this? A bit of Indiana Jones, and a bit of a professor, and a bit of an explorer." Stephen Moffat also described the 11th Doctor as, quote, "a cross between Indiana Jones and Stan Laurel." Although the comparison might seem strange at first, there's definitely something of the whip-wielding adventurer about Smith's outfit, particularly with its tan colour scheme. Its resemblance to the bow-tie tweed suit worn by Indy in Temple of Doom is uncanny, and nowhere are the comparisons more on the nose than in Series 6, when the Doctor dons a Stetson hat. Certain 11th Doctor stories have an Indiana Jones aesthetic too. In fact, the torchlit underhenge from the Pandorica Opens was directly inspired by the various caves and tunnels seen in the Indy movie franchise. And hey, if Smith is still playing the Doctor at the same age Harrison Ford just played Indiana Jones, that means he can appear in Doctor Who's 100th anniversary in 2063. Can you imagine? Number 5, he almost wasn't played by Matt Smith. Every actor who plays the Doctor ends up becoming synonymous with the character, and there's always a rigorous audition process to find the show's new lead. Stephen Moffat has since stated that he was initially looking for an older Doctor for number 11, and although Matt Smith emerged as an early favourite, lots of other actors were seen for the role. One potential candidate was Chiwetel Ejiofor, who is widely believed to have been offered the role but turned it down. The rumour mill had its own ideas, with Patterson Joseph, who played Roderick in Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways, Sean Pertwee, son of third Doctor John Pertwee, and even Billy Piper, speculated to be in the running. Yep, that is serious, Billy Piper. Meanwhile, outgoing showrunner Russell T Davies, who had of course stoked the fire himself by including a fake-out regeneration in The Stolen Earth and titling the 2008 Christmas special The Next Doctor, wanted to see Alonzo and the War Between the Land and the Sea actor Russell Tovey in the role. These are all exciting suggestions in their own right, but no one can deny that Matt Smith was born to play the 11th Doctor. Number 4, he's crossed paths with the Master. Although the 10th, 12th and 13th Doctors all got their own Masters, the 11th did not, but he has more connections with his Time Lord foe than you might think. For one thing, the first and last episodes to feature Matt Smith both included incarnations of the Master. John Sim in The End of Time and Michelle Gomez in Deep Breath. Sure, they didn't actually meet, but it's still something. Where the 11th Doctor did come face to face with the Master, the Anthony Ainley version in this case, was in the expanded universe in the IDW comic book story Prisoners of Time. Then Titan Comics introduced a brand new incarnation of the Master, resembling a young boy in their second year of 11th Doctor adventures. This Master never actually crossed paths with Smith's Doctor, but did cause plenty of trouble for him from behind the scenes. When you take all of this into account, the 11th Doctor has been adjacent to all of the main Masters, save for Delgado and Dewan. Not bad for a Doctor who never met the character on TV, eh? Number 3, his bow ties have a colourful secret. The 11th Doctor certainly has a good dress sense, and there's more to his outfits than meets the eye. It's not an exact science, but some fans have noticed that the colour scheme of the Doctor's bow tie in Series 5 corresponds to the time period he's visiting. Red for the future and present, and blue for past. Just as the 13th Doctor's magenta t-shirt tended to appear more in historical stories, so too did the 11th Doctor's blue bow tie, featuring in all 3 Series 5 historicals: Victory of the Daleks, The Vampires of Venice, and Vincent and the Doctor. Conversely, most of the contemporary and future set stories of Series 5 feature the red bow tie. The only exceptions to the rule are The Lodger, which uses the blue outfit, The Pandorica Opens and The Big Bang, which uses the red one, and Amy's Choice, which uses both. And to be fair, in those last 2 cases, those stories are either set within dreams or they hop about all over the place. So there wasn't really a correct bow tie colour to assign them. This bow tie rule also continues into Series 6, though again with a few exceptions. It also continues a similar detail found in the Eccleston and Tennant era time vortexes, which were blue whenever the TARDIS was travelling backwards in time and red whenever it went forwards. Eagle-eyed fans will also notice that there are 2 different tweed jackets worn by Smith in Series 5. The more checkered tweed worn in Victory of the Daleks and the Time of Angels and Flesh and Stone, and the more textured tweed worn across the rest of the series. You already knew bow ties were cool, but this takes things to a whole other level. Good luck unseeing this, by the way. Number 2, he has more stories than any modern Doctor. Which Doctor has the most stories? It's always a contentious topic, not least because there are so many different ways to count them. Is Flux 1 story or 6? Are two-parters 1 story or 2? And is Utopia, The Sound of Drums and Last of the Time Lords really a 3-parter? Please discuss. Anyway, whichever way you square it, the 11th Doctor comes out on top compared to every other new series Doctor. Counting two-parters as 1 story and Utopia as a standalone, each series of Russell T Davies's first era contains 10 stories. Accounting for specials leaves the 9th Doctor with 10 stories in total and the 10th Doctor with 37. In contrast, the 11th Doctor had a more inconsistent series structure, with more standalone episodes and fewer two-parters. Series 5 was 10 stories long, while Series 6 had 11. Meanwhile, Series 7 was entirely comprised of single-part adventures, a whopping 13 of them. With specials added into the mix, the 11th Doctor's story total stands at an impressive 39, which is more than the 12th and 13th Doctor's totals too. So yes, we're all stories in the end, but the 11th Doctor more than most. Number 1, his defining moment almost didn't happen. The 11th Doctor had countless memorable moments, from his speeches in the Pandorica Opens and the Rings of Akaten to intimidating Colonel Runaway and riding up the Shard. But one of his defining scenes wasn't conceived of until the 11th hour. Get it? Did you get it? I'll stop anyway. Towards the end of the Series 5 opener, the Doctor unmasks Prisoner Zero and hands him over to the Atraxi. The all-seeing alien swiftly departs, only to be called back by the Doctor for a scolding. If this scene seems slightly tacked on, that's because it was, as Stephen Moffat admitted during the 11th hour's lockdown tweet-along. The episode originally didn't include this moment, but BBC executive Jane Tranter, who would go on to co-found Bad Wolf, the company now producing Doctor Who, had other ideas, arguing that the episode needed a big swaggering hero moment for Matt Smith. And thank goodness she did. Not only does this scene cement Smith as the Doctor, it's easily one of Eleven's most iconic moments to boot. Not bad for something so last minute. And that concludes our list. But while we're talking about things you didn't know, why not check out 10 things you didn't know about UNIT? In the meantime, I've been Ellie for Who Culture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.